Good morning, brothers and sisters and friends. Today is a new and exciting day for our Facebook presentations. Regrettably, after four informative and entertaining shows, we were compelled to stop the series due to the pandemic. Well, my friends, we are back, and I'm sure you will love today's show. My name is Anthony Naccarato, and I'm proud and privileged to be the New York State President of the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America Foundation in Baltimore, New York. We are a 115-year-old national organization that was founded in 1905 to promote and preserve our culture and heritage and to assist deserving charities. Today, our New York Grand Lodge Foundation is proud to present a very special guest, Mike De Lucia, a proud Italian-American from the Bronx, New York. Mike is truly a Renaissance man, a writer of many acclaimed books and short stories with Italian themes. A high school teacher, a businessman, and an actor. I will leave the rest of the conversation that we'll have during the next half hour. I am sure that you will hear his wonderful story and that you will run to your computer and order every book that he has written and that you will follow him from now on. Good morning, Mike, and welcome to the New York State Grand Lodge Foundation Facebook Live.
Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Mike. Well, Mike, the first time I met you, I was very impressed by you. Not only are you a true Italian American, but I come to find out that you were a school teacher, which I've always respected it. And I also found out you were a writer and an actor and so on. But I focused in on you writing books. And the next thing I heard that you were writing a book called Madness.
Right.
Tell us something about yourself.
Born and raised in the Bronx, as you said. Loved my neighborhood. Lived there until I went to Catholic grammar school, St. Benedict's. Then I went to Catholic high school, Monsignor Scanlon. And then I worked in the Bronx. I had a Wise potato chip route. That was my first business. I was in South Bronx, and I traveled all around. Yankee Stadium was part of my territory, so I got to pass that every day. And then after I sold the business, I moved. I guess I was maybe 30, and I moved out of the Bronx, but I still visit. And eventually, after I did my own businesses, I had a youth theater group. All right, it was called Limelight, and at the time, a friend of mine came to the show, and she said she was a teacher in New York City, and she said, "You should be a teacher." She said, "You're really good. You're really good with the kids. You should be a teacher." And I was like, "I'm too old to be a teacher." At the time, I was 40. So I have to go back to school and so on and so forth. So she convinced me to go. I went back to school, became a school teacher, and but I always had Madness. I started Madness, started writing it when I was in about 1983, and it just came out a couple of years ago. So I could tell you the whole story behind it, but I don't know what other questions you have.
Well, the Bronx is very close to this organization. We have many lodges in the Bronx, but also our immediate past president that Robert Ferrito was born in the Bronx. And
we went to the same high school.
Did you go to that?
Yes.
That I didn't know.
Yes, we did.
And so we're very close to the Bronx. And as someone from Brooklyn, the Bronx was a mystery to me. I sort of got around Queens pretty good, but when it came to the Bronx, I was completely lost. But tell me, you wrote that book, Madness. Could you tell us something about how you started to write it, but more importantly, what's behind the book, what the subject matter was?
Okay. As you mentioned before, I was an actor. I still am, but I don't pursue that, at this point. But, when I was, after high school, I went to acting school in Manhattan, studied there for a while, but I got married very young. I got married my high school sweetheart. And, I thought I was so full of energy and so full of ambition that I could do it all. I can get married. I could have kids. I could be an actor. I learned that the most energy you could possibly put into, you have to concentrate. If you want to be a writer, you want to be an actor, that's your wife, that's your husband, that's everything. That you're married to that, because it's so difficult to do. But anyway, when I was in that, I said, you know what? I don't have the time. I was working. I had the Wise potato chip route. I said, I'm going to be like Sylvester Stallone. I'm going to write my own story. I'm going to write my own movie, and I'm going to star in it. And I'm not going to sell it to anybody unless I get to play the lead. So I was telling my family during the, the 2:00 family dinner, what I was going to do. I was on embark on this new thing. And my father said, well, what are you going to write about? At that time, I had never written anything before. And I said, I have no idea. I'm going to write something. He goes, I have the perfect story for you. It's the greatest basketball player that ever lived. I said, who? He said, Hank Louis Eddy. I said, who's Hank Louis Eddy? And if he's so great, how come I never heard of him? He said, well, that's why the story is so great, because people don't know that it was an Italian who revolutionized basketball, made it into the game it is today. He said, I don't know, he played, in like the 20s or the 30s. He read something about him one time. So I went down. There was no internet, at that time. So I took off 2 weeks from work. I had somebody run my route for me. And I went to the library in Manhattan with the 2 lions. And I started researching. Nobody was like researching a ghost. No one knew who he was. And then little by little, I started to find bits and pieces about this. So I was looking at microfilms, and I started to see his name, Louis Eddy, Hank Louis. And I started to follow, and I was, all of a sudden, I felt as though I found gold. And then I started to go into the periodicals, and I found a great article in Sports Illustrated that took place when Louis Eddy was older. Cut a long story short, the reason why nobody knows about Hank Louis Eddy, and I'll tell you in a minute why, how important he is to basketball, is that when he graduated college, there was no NBA to go to. Joe DiMaggio, and they were friends because they grew up in the same neighborhood. Joe DiMaggio can go on to the Yankees, right? He played with the Seals, and then he went with the Yankees, and then he became Joe DiMaggio. But he went to Stanford University. Back then, basketball was like lacrosse is. It was a school. It was a school sport. There was no NBA because it was a little bit of a boring game. They only scored 25, 35 points in a game. Louis Eddy was the first person to score 50 points in one game. And I don't, he perfected the running one-handed shot. He was an absolute wonder, so much so that when they created, he's responsible for March Madness, and he laid the foundation for the NBA.
And he was only 6'2", right?
Yeah. It was because of his influence and what he did and how he changed the game that he made it into something that was popular. And when they created the NBA, or when they created the Basketball Hall of Fame, the first person they inducted in was Dr. James Naismith. That's the inventor of basketball. The second person they inducted is Hank Louis Eddy. That is a tremendous honor.
That is amazing.
Son of Italian immigrants.
That is amazing. An Italian, son of an Italian immigrant that did so much, and so few Italians know about him until this book was written.
Yeah, and there's been interest from several people about making it into a movie. And if we had a longer show here, I would get into all of that. Right now, there's still people looking at it, but there's a little bit more concentration on the new book right now.
Well, I tell you, that would be such a perfect movie.
Being brothers.
Being brothers and Mad Men. I think both.
It's going to happen. Madness is going to happen.
As a proud Italian American, the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America Foundation, we promote heritage and culture. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is heritage and culture, because those were the periods of time in the 1920s and 30s where Italians were not that appreciated.
Right.
But yet you had a young man doing such great things and contributing something to what's become a real big, important sports in America.
It's global. It's
global. The Italians love to play basketball.
Yes.
A lot of American basketball players go to Italy. So I think that would make a perfect book. The movie, I would love to go and see it. Now, this book I found really intriguing. Tell us a little bit about Being Brothers.
Being Brothers is the newest book, and I'm not sure if you could see the madness one there, but Being Brothers, is my newest book, and I wrote this during COVID actually. I had written a short story called Settling a Score about these two brothers who didn't get along with each other, lived in the Bronx in 1973, and they accidentally wind up on the same baseball team together. And, this story is about what it was like growing up in the time when we didn't have cell phones, when there was no computers, when kids played in the streets, when we built wagons and we played stickball and we drank from hoses, and there wasn't play dates. Your mother, you knew what time to get home, and you took your bike and you went out. So the story not only talks about the relationship, between these two brothers and building baseball, as a background to it. It's really about the era, about that brilliant time that we lived, that it was magical. We didn't know it back then, but being a kid, from that time, from up until the first cell phones came out, until 100 years before that, being a kid in the city or even anywhere really didn't change much. The music might have changed, but basically the street games that we played, the whole attitude that we had, it was all about the same. But then once cell phones came and video games came, this canyon began to form between what it was to be a kid back then and what it is to be a kid right now. We had to learn as we did. You learn by doing. Now they have more on the phones, and they learn about things, through the phones before they even do it. And what's scary about the computers, right, is that it's unboundarized. It's raw. You can look at anything on the internet, and I don't know how good that is for a kid's brain. We had this innocence when we were kids, and that's what being brothers is about. And it actually caught the attention of Tiny Apples Productions. Julie Pacino, it's Al's daughter. She's the person who created Tiny Apples. And right now this is in development with her company. And we're hoping to shoot it a year from this summer.
Well, that would be great. You know what? I read it in two readings. That's one of the reasons I got such a tan. One of them was I sat outside. I didn't realize I was sitting in the sun the whole time. But, I read it in two readings. Now, this book I found very interesting for a variety of reasons. I was around 72, 73. I got married in 71. My daughter was born in 72, so it was that era. I also found it interesting because it was a book within a book.
Yes.
You talked about the writer, then you talked about the story, then you went back to the writer. But also, it was written like a script. I never read a book like that before.
It was a choice. And there are some people who look at that choice and, and they're like, I don't know. Is it a book? Is it a script? They're used to opening a book and it looks like a book. When you open this book, it looks like a screenplay. But there's two stories going on. The beginning of it is the writer, right? As you know, and he's writing this and he's looking over the screenplay one last time before he sends it out to this agent. And because there's within the screenplay, as you know, it's an older version of a guy, and he's walking through the neighborhood and he's reminiscing about the stories of the old time. So that's its own story. And when I was going to make a novel out of it, I was like, I don't want to turn this into a novel because I'm going to lose the voice of Jack, the older version of Jackie or Giacomo. And so I came up with this other storyline. Why don't I preserve the screenplay as it is, but then just comment and go in and out about the narrator and what's going on while he's reading the final draft of his screenplay. So what I really loved about this book when I read it, it captured the Italian experience. The mother was a typical Italian mother. Mm-hmm. The father was a typical Italian. There was love in the family. Yes.
And there was love in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And the other thing that really struck me, is it's the kind of book that you can give to your 12-year-old grandson.
Yes.
Does not have foul language in it. It doesn't have, it's a book. It's a G book.
Yes.
You don't see that very often anymore.
Well, that's one of the things I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to sell a lot of things. I'm trying to sell, Italians, hopefully we'll get to, my mission and what I want to do and, what's behind these books. but our society has the movies and the stories that come out now are so dark. You know, even the comic book things. Everything is so dark these days, and you know, this is a story. These are stories that, you know, it's about inspiration. It's about family. It's about friendship. It's about, you know, overcoming obstacles. But there's nothing dark in it. There's no, you know, they're G books. You know, you can sit around with the family. You know, when this comes out, you can do a family video night. I hope that it starts trending in that direction, going back to, you know, family stories and stories about friendship.
I couldn't agree with more. You know, the relationship between the two brothers as it developed, and the ending itself, I certainly not going to give away the ending, but the ending itself was so heartwarming. It just made me feel so good. I said, I'm glad I spent the time reading it. I like to read. My wife Mary reads a lot more than me, but I like to read. But I like to read certain things. You know, I don't like to read trashy books.
Right.
I just, but the typical father, Italian father, I found very intriguing.
Yeah.
You know, he had a lot of power, but he didn't need to exercise it.
Right.
They knew that the father was the father and the mother was the mother.
Right.
That's kind of lost now. You see that in the supermarket. You walk in the supermarket and you see a 6-7-year-old deciding that they want this bag of chips, and the mother has to beg them. No, you know. In those days, you didn't do that. The mother said no. The father said no. That was the end of the argument.
I was working on real life experience here. You know, I mean, this was, you know, I borrowed a lot from my own family, you know, because I grew up, that was my era. I grew up in that time period. You know, I said before I went to Catholic grammar school, you know, this kid, Jackie, goes to Catholic grammar school, which I, you know, kind of based on my experiences in school, you know, Sister Patrick Joseph and, you know, Sister Charles Edward and, you know.
And the paddle, like that. I remember the paddle.
We all remember. If you went to Catholic school in the 70s, you remember the paddle or the hand, whatever. It didn't make a difference. You could have gotten either. But yeah, so I enjoyed writing them. I wrote this fairly quick. You know, I just finished my newest screenplay right now. The working title is called Ryan Stone, and there's no vowels at the end of that name, but the leading character's mother, Valentina Fermi, is from Italy, and so, you know, there is an Italian element that runs through, you know, that one, even though, you know, the protagonist in this is Italian, the protagonists in this are Italian, and Ryan Stone, there's the main character is half Italian, with roots to Italy, and I wrote in her last name is Fermi. There's a distant relation to Enrico Fermi, so I included, you know, that little storyline in there.
It's funny you say that. As soon as you use the word Fermi, the name, that's the first thing that came to mind, Enrico Fermi, which again is, I believe, is someone that's not well known in America. Yeah. She should be more well known. Unfortunately, some of the inventions that he made, and then there's a attachment to the atom bomb, was something that I think some people might find uncomfortable. But he was a great scientist.
True, but if you want to spin that story a little bit, you know, Germany was also working on the atomic bomb.
Exactly.
And what happens if they came up with it before us? The whole world will be different.
It will be a totally different world.
It'll be a different world right now, and you know, everyone, when you talk about, you know, the atom bomb, you talk about, you know, Einstein, Oppenheimer, you don't, but Fermi was at the root of that. Without Enrico Fermi, Germany might have gotten the atomic bomb before us.
I don't doubt that for a second. So I don't doubt that. What do you see yourself in about 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, if things worked out according to, you know, the fantasy in my mind, I would be putting out one film a year featuring Italians in direct contrast to the media stereotype. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here. You know, the media has boxed us in to either being criminals or mafiosa, or being, the dumb person in the room, the Jersey Shore people, the Gavone, and sure, I mean, but that's a stereotype. Every single nationality has the ruffians. Every single nationality has organized crime, but Italians are much, much more than those two things. And I don't want to go out with signs and protest. As a teacher, the best way to educate is to be consistent. You can't talk about a subject once and then never go back to it and expect people to remember it. It's got to be consistent. So this is an historical fiction novel. This is a novel, but it still tells the story of an accurate description of what Italians were. Again, we're an extremely inventive people. We're people who have advanced the world. I'll put our accomplishments up against any nationality out there. We have contributed heavily, and we are a lot more than the two categories that Hollywood has represented us as since the late 70s until now.
Well, the Italian American experience, being an immigrant myself, is so wonderful. What we have contributed to America, and sometimes it does get lost in the negativity. But when you look at the night before last, I happened to go to the Nassau County legislature, where one of the nicest men I ever met, Peter Padenti, he's the president of the Michael Marino Lodge. He donated his kidney to a total stranger.
Wow.
Now, again, talk about positive image. I'm a positive image person.
Yes.
I don't dwell on negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever somebody wants to do that's negative, that's up to them.
Right.
But when somebody does something positive, and you fall in that category.
Thank you.
When these two books were written, to me, that's positivity. That's why I wanted to have some time with you today, and I hope that the listeners are enjoying this. It's very, very important that we promote you, that we promote with the positive aspects of Italian Americans are.
Yeah, stereotype. We're moving away from that in society.
I wouldn't give him 30 seconds. As far as I'm concerned, if somebody came to me and say, I got to give you X millions of dollars to make a negative movie or positive movie, but we only get half the money, I'd rather take half the money.
Right.
And this is, how can the viewers help you in getting this done?
Well, right now I'm at the point where I'm an independent. I'm an independent writer. I self-publish. I could go to publishers, but I'm not ready to go to them yet. I don't want to go to them yet. I'm waiting until a movie comes out, or, people could support, people can get the books and they could share them. They can share the information about the books, about this positive image. And also I'm always looking for people who want to invest in the films, because that's, money is at the root of everything that happens. You can't make a movie without money. So I'm really looking for individuals who would like to contribute, to a film, like to be part of the finance package of a film, or know people in the film, industry. Again, Being Brothers, it's running under the original title of Settling a Score. Being Brothers is the novel. It's running under Settling a Score. Right now it's the working title for the script. We're still looking to get Madness, out there. The budget on Madness is a lot more. That's really why, that's what's holding Madness back right now. So people to get the books, people to share the books, which they're available in audiobook. They're available obviously in paperback. They're available in ebook.
So if you went to Amazon, you can buy both books.
You can get all three, you can get, all three versions. So really people getting the books, people sharing the books, and really people contacting me at Green Tea Books. I believe it's up there. And saying, I'd like to be part of it, or people in the business, people, who know people in the entertainment business, contact me, and maybe we bring them on with Being Brothers. Maybe they become part of that team, and hopefully, that leads to Madness. Well,
if anyone is watching right now, and you can help in any aspects of what Mike just said, I would encourage you to do that. Either book will make a great movie. I personally would like to see Madness, because Here is someone, not that I wouldn't like to see the book being brothers, but I personally would like to see Madness made, because Madness, it talks about someone that contributed so much to America and has not received
The
any
credit.
recognition at all.
Right.
Okay, you know, we have the Michael Jordan, and obviously, you know, he's a great player, and he deserves all the accolades he needs.
Yeah.
He gets. But the truth of the matter is that if it wasn't for Lucetti, you know, some of these things might have come along there, but they might have come along much later. And he didn't get a lot of remuneration. He made a movie, right?
He did. He was actually the first national celebrity basketball player. And after college, he was signed to a movie with Betty Grable. It was called Campus and Confessions, and he played himself in the movie. But the movie was so terrible. It's a very forgettable film. But he was known across the entire country. The original title of the story was Hank Lucetti, a Forgotten American Legend. But you know, anyway.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to Amazon. If you can hold up the books again, I'll hold up one. Okay. Again, Mike De Lucia. In Italian, for those of you that are Italian and say Tony Naccarato is mispronouncing it, you're right. It's Mike De Lucia. But we pronounce it here De Lucia. It's the same thing with my name, Naccarato. It's really Naccarato. So if you could go to Amazon and wherever you buy books and buy it, it will help Mike quite a bit in accomplishing his achievements. And same thing with Madness. You know, yeah, I believe you probably do presentations also. If anybody,
I do. I would love to. I do Zoom presentations. You know, before the pandemic, I was going to lodges and I was, you know, addressing, you know, the congregation, talking about what it is to be Italian and how I'm trying to end the stereotype. You know, again, just in a quiet way, but just a consistent way. You know, so that's what I talk about. I talk about what it is to be Italian, how great we are, and that can go on for quite a while. So I try and tone that down because we could, you know, there's so much I could talk about. And then I talk a little bit about the books, and I love to do it. I love to get with people and be live and just interact with other Italians. It's a beautiful thing.
So if anybody would like that presentation, you can get a hold of me, or you can get a hold of the Grand Lodge, and we can make Mike available, and you can speak directly with him and what he might be able to do for you. We only have a half hour here, so we can't get too deeply into it. But Mike, I really appreciate, you know, your commitment to Italian Americans. And the culture and the heritage. When I was reading this book, it just brought me back. I read them both, but I read this one about a year ago. But this one here, when I was, it just brought me back to being able, you know, you would knock on somebody's door, I'm calling for. I don't know if you remember that term. You know, I'm calling for Tony, I'm calling for Frank, and then, or you went outside and there was 1,000 kids.
Right.
Today, you know, you don't have that anymore. That was so wonderful.
There was always kids out in the street.
We would jump the Johnny pumps.
Yes.
And we would climb trees. And I remember climbing trees and staying up there all day, like a bunch of
making forts.
Like making. Well, we had a
Johnny pumps. A lot of people don't know what Johnny pumps are.
Well, that's fire hydrants.
The fire hydrants.
So we would jump. I wasn't much of an athlete, so I didn't have that. I didn't do very well jumping Johnny pumps. But I have friends of mine that could jump because they had them at different levels.
But you did Johnny on the pony.
Oh, my back still hurts from it. I think that any problem that I have with my back was the Ringolevio and Johnny on the pony.
Yeah, trying to break through the arms. Yeah.
So, Mike, thank you very much for a great day today.
Thank you for having me.
I had a great time, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
I'm always here to help you in any way that I can.
Thanks so much, Tony.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this show. I'm hoping to do a few more before I leave as president. I want you to know that anybody's interested in contacting us, our Grand Lodge office is in Belmore, New York, and the email account is NYS OSDIA.com. And you could you can get call me, and I will give you my number, 917 539-9321. So thank you very much. Today's going to be 80 degrees. Have a wonderful day. Go out and eat outside or have a picnic if you're not working. If you're working, well, you can't have a picnic.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao, and all the best. God bless you all.
God
Take
bless.
care. Bye-bye.